It didn't have a return address. Just my name written like a dare. I found it wedged between the slats of the front gate, barely visible from the porch. Tucked there like something meant to be hidden, but not too well. It wasn't sealed with tape. Just the ordinary kind of envelope, plain and silent, the way people deliver bad news when they don't want to be caught holding it. I should have left it alone. But I didn't. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the ink like it might smudge into meaning. My name, every curve of the letters familiar, but too neat. Not her handwriting. Not mine. Not anyone I could place. Inside, screenshots. Hotel receipts. Timestamps. Photos. Photos. I don't even remember walking inside. I must have. I was suddenly standing in the hallway, my thumb brushing the corner of a printout I couldn't stop looking at. There she was, laughing in a low-lit bar, eyes lit in that way she used to save for me. Her hand on a man's chest. Her wedding ring gone. His shirt halfway unbuttoned. The timestamp was from 3 nights ago. She told me she was at her sister's. That same smile. That same tilt of her head. Like nothing was fractured. Like we still lived in that apartment with creaky floors and cheap wine and arguments that ended in quiet apologies. But that woman in the photo? She wasn't tired. She wasn't apologizing. She looked free. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next. I didn't scream or cry or rip the photos to shreds like some betrayed husband on a movie screen. I just stood there, for hours maybe, sorting through every page, every pixel, every lie folded into paper. She came home around 10:40. Said traffic was bad. Kissed me on the cheek. The scent of lavender clung to her like always. I wondered if it was for me. Or him. I smiled back. I sat down at the kitchen table with the envelope in my lap and felt something strange, like the floor had shifted but no one else had noticed. That kind of loneliness. The kind you don't cry about. The kind that rots quietly under your ribs. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't sleep. I took inventory. Of toothbrushes. Of coffee mugs. Of how many times she'd said I'm just tired in the last 6 weeks. I counted how often she'd turned her phone face down. How many texts had buzzed and gone ignored when I was in the room. How many nights she left her ring on the soap dish. I used to think silence meant peace. Now I think it means something's hiding. She walked by me in her slippers and hoodie, humming something off-key. It sounded like the chorus of a song we used to dance to in the kitchen. She stopped for a second, met my eyes. I looked up from the envelope and said nothing. She didn't ask what I was holding. Some betrayals don't scream. They whisper for years. She kept forgetting small things, but remembering all the wrong ones. Like my favorite meal. She asked if I wanted salmon or pasta for dinner, eyes wide with enthusiasm, like she was offering me a gift. Salmon. I haven't eaten salmon in 2 years. I can't stand the texture. She used to tease me about it. But she said it so confidently, so rehearsed, that for a split second I questioned myself. Had I changed? Had she? I shook my head gently and said pasta. She nodded like it made sense, but something in her gaze shifted, like she had to recalibrate something behind her eyes. That's when I started noticing the pattern. The drift. She remembered fake anniversaries, mentioned our trip to the lake in March. We never went to the lake in March. March was when her mother had surgery and we barely saw each other. But she said it like it was real. Like she'd lived that moment, just not with me. I watched her closely. Her hands moved differently now. Slower. More careful. Her hugs had space in them. She'd start a sentence and stop midway, as if censoring herself mid-thought. And the laughter, it used to spill out of her in waves. Now it came in staccato bursts, like punctuation to a story she wasn't actually telling me. I don't think she was lying. I think she was performing. There's a kind of dishonesty that's softer than a lie. It's not what's said, it's what's omitted, what's shifted ever so slightly off-center. Like walking through your home and noticing every picture frame is tilted by exactly 2 degrees. She wasn't hiding from me. She was hiding around me. Like a magician redirecting attention with practiced grace. Look here, she'd say with her voice, her hands, her warmth, while the secret slid just out of sight. Her phone never buzzed when I was near. Her texts were always cleared. Even her lock screen had changed, no more pictures of us, just a generic mountain landscape that meant nothing to either of us. When I asked why, she shrugged and said she liked the colors. She used to hate mountains. Said they made her feel small. It wasn't just the things she remembered wrong, it was the things she stopped remembering altogether. My sister's birthday. The movie we watched on our first date. The scar behind my ear. All the little pieces that built the bridge between us, now floating somewhere beyond her reach. I wasn't losing her. That would have been easier. I was watching her become someone else, cell by cell, choice by choice. And yet, she still kissed me goodbye each morning. She still laughed at my jokes. still held my hand on the couch like nothing had shifted. But her fingers didn't curl the same way anymore. And sometimes when I looked at her, I felt like I was trespassing in a story she didn't realize I still remembered. I never accused. I archived. At some point, I stopped being her husband and started being something else. A recorder. A quiet keeper of contradictions. There's a strange power in stillness. When you say nothing, everything becomes louder. The lies echo. The patterns sharpen. I began collecting. Her gym mornings started on Tuesdays. Then Thursdays. Eventually Saturdays too. Except she always came back without a sweat. Hair perfect. Skin too dry for a workout. One morning, she returned wearing new earrings, tiny silver ones I'd never seen. I said nothing. Just noted the detail like a scientist adding another line to a data log. She called them networking dinners. Twice a week, sometimes 3. Always on days she left work early. Her calendar synced perfectly with the GPS tracker I'd hidden in her trunk. That was new for me, the GPS. A line I never thought I'd cross. But when you're married to a ghost, you start chasing the shape of what used to be real. I watched the pings like heartbeats. One night, she stopped for 47 minutes in a parking lot behind a boutique hotel. The next night, the same. Different time. Same 47-minute window. That number stuck in my throat. It felt too precise. Too repeated to be innocent. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't looking for a confession. I was watching to see how long she'd wear the mask before it slipped. Maybe part of me hoped she'd falter, say the wrong name, repeat a story twice. But she didn't. She was graceful in her betrayal. Like someone who'd rehearsed this life. So I adapted. I charted her routes on graph paper I kept tucked between old tax files. Labeled her time blocks in a spreadsheet with color-coded tabs. Blue for confirmed lies. Red for emotional distance. Yellow for the moments that still felt real, though those were fading quickly. Her routines became rehearsals. Each excuse predictable, almost comforting in its repetition. There's a certain cruelty in how gently people disappear from your life. Not with screaming. Not with slammed doors. But with tiny moments of edited truth. She'd say, be back in an hour, and return in 2. She'd kiss me goodbye like a habit, not a choice. Her perfume lingered longer than her attention. And me? I played my part. I smiled. I cooked. I nodded in all the right places. But inside, I was watching the structure collapse. The more she lied, the more organized I became. My grief had blueprints now. My heartbreak had timestamps. Each data point, a silent reminder that I wasn't crazy. That what I felt was real. That I hadn't imagined the drift. I no longer asked her where she'd been. I already knew. I just wanted to see how long she'd pretend not to notice I was watching. I became the quiet witness to her undoing. She wore perfume she didn't own. I noticed. It wasn't one of hers. Not the citrus vanilla blend she used to wear when we went out. Not the airy floral she'd spritz before work. This was darker. Rich. Musky. It smelled like closeness. Like breath on a neck. Like someone else's choice, still clinging to her skin. She walked past me in the hallway, cheeks flushed, jacket half-zipped. The scent hit me like a memory I didn't have. I didn't say anything at first. I just breathed it in, quietly stunned by how unfamiliar it felt. It was the kind of scent that doesn't linger from hugging a friend, it saturates, seeps, stains. When I finally asked where she'd been, she didn't even blink. With Kara, she said. You remember Kara from work? I didn't. I know her whole team, names, faces, LinkedIn profiles. I know who she complains about, who she respects, who she calls when she needs help with Excel. But not Kara. There is no Kara. Not in her texts. Not in the holiday photos. Not in the company org chart. Still, I nodded. Smiled. Said, sounds fun. And then I made a dinner reservation for 3. It was a test. Not because I expected her to bring someone, but because I wanted to see how far she'd stretch the lie. I picked a small restaurant downtown, one we hadn't visited in years. The kind with flickering candles and tight booths that don't allow for distance. I made the reservation under Thompson, party of 3. When I told her, she laughed nervously. 3? For you, me, and Kara, I said. She froze for a second. Just a second. But it was enough. Her mouth opened slightly, a breath caught behind her teeth. Then she smiled too quickly. Oh, she's busy this week, she said, looking at the floor. Of course she is. I dropped it. Just let it sit there, silent and sticky. Later that night, I found the perfume online. Tom Ford. Oud Wood. $310 a bottle. It wasn't hers. It was his. The discovery didn't hurt the way I expected. It didn't gut me. clarified things, like wiping condensation off a mirror and finally seeing the full outline of the thing that's been haunting you. She was slipping, not just in her lies, but in her attention to them. The Cara fabrication was rushed. The perfume, unconsidered. She thought I wouldn't notice because I never yelled, because I made coffee in the mornings and paid the bills and still remembered to ask how her day was. But I was watching, and in that moment, I realized something chilling. She wasn't even being careful anymore, because somewhere deep down, she no longer feared losing me. And that was the most revealing betrayal of all. I shook his hand like we'd never met. Technically, we hadn't. Not face to face. Not like this, under warm pendant lights, beside the wine rack she picked out during a Black Friday sale, in the house I still pay the mortgage on. But I knew him. I knew his name, Daniel. I knew his car. I knew what nights he parked it 2 blocks down to avoid suspicion. I knew the way his shadow leaned too close to her in one of the photos. The way she smiled sideways in return. He arrived 5 minutes early. That said something. Not too eager. Not too detached. The kind of punctuality that feels like a habit, not a statement. His cologne entered the room before he did. The same scent she wore by accident last week. Not a trace of guilt on him. Just something crisp, musky, and bold. Something that lingered in doorways like a signature. She wasn't home yet. That part had been intentional. He smiled when I opened the door. "Hey, I'm looking for Claire." I returned the smile. Warm, effortless. "Ah, you must be Daniel." He hesitated. Just a flicker. "Yeah, and you are?" "Her cousin. In town for a few days." He laughed, relieved maybe, or just polite. "Nice. I brought wine. Cabernet. Not the cheap kind." He handed it to me like a peace offering, unaware of the war. We moved to the kitchen. I offered him a seat. The table was already set. 3 plates. 1 ghost. He talked. About tech stocks. Startups. His last ski trip. His favorite ramen place downtown. A man rehearsing charm. I nodded, smiled, listened. Every word cataloged. Every gesture studied. He mentioned her once by nickname. C. Like they shared a secret. I didn't flinch. The irony sat with us like an invisible 4th guest. He thought I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Because the man sitting across from him wasn't the husband anymore. I was something colder now. Something quieter. A curator of silence. She was 15 minutes late. And I wanted to see what kind of man waits for a married woman in another man's house. Sipping wine. Laughing with her so-called cousin. All without asking a single question. Daniel passed the test. He was exactly who I thought he'd be. And that was the final confirmation I needed. When she walked in, time paused between her inhale and her collapse. Her key clicked, the door creaked, and then there was silence. A stretched, elastic kind of silence, before her breath caught halfway up her throat. She stood there in the doorway, framed like a painting that had been tilted just enough to disturb the whole wall. Her eyes moved first, to me, then Daniel, then the table, the wine, the 3rd plate. She blinked, just once, a defense mechanism. Then, "What is this?" Her voice was barely a whisper, like she was afraid of waking something. I smiled, not cruelly, not kindly either, just gently, like I might with someone who forgot their own address. "Dinner," I said. Daniel chuckled, still oblivious. He held up his glass. "You've got a hell of a cousin. Great taste in wine." She didn't laugh. She walked toward the table with the unsteady poise of someone performing muscle memory. Her body sat before her mind caught up. Hands in her lap, back too straight, her pulse visible in her throat. The seat creaked under her weight, but she said nothing. Just stared at me, not pleading, not angry, just trying to calculate how much I knew. I kept my tone casual, my smile intact. I asked about her day. I complimented Daniel's watch. I passed the breadbasket with reverence, as though this wasn't an autopsy in real time. She didn't eat. Daniel did. Every word I spoke was polite, cordial, meticulously chosen to slide beneath the skin without leaving visible marks. I asked her how Cara was. Her fork twitched. I mentioned the boutique hotel on Marston Avenue. She blinked too fast. I admired her perfume. Told her it reminded me of something bold, something familiar. She said nothing. I think Daniel started to notice then. The way her hands shook. The way my questions didn't quite land like they should. But by the time he started piecing it together, it was already too late. I raised my glass. To long journeys, I said, and shorter farewells. She looked at me with something beyond fear, beyond guilt. It was recognition. The way a locked door recognizes the sound of its own key. Daniel toasted, still smiling, still behind. The air tasted metallic after that. She stayed seated, but her body was already somewhere else, grasping for a version of herself that hadn't walked through that door. Dinner ended, but the performance didn't. And somewhere between her silence and my smile, the marriage finally expired. Dessert was tiramisu. The final course was truth. I sliced it cleanly, 3 equal pieces, each placed with care. She didn't move. Her spoon lay untouched, her posture rigid, as if the right movement might shatter her entirely. Daniel smiled, still slightly unsure, but not enough to leave. He complimented the meal. "This is incredible," he said. "You a chef or something?" I didn't answer. Instead, I reached beneath the table and placed a manila envelope beside his plate. "Light, plain, surgical. You'll want to read this," I said. He looked at it like it might bite, then glanced at her. She was already gone. Not physically, but in the way people are when they're trying to disappear into walls. Her skin went pale, her jaw locked. She knew what it was. Knew it before he touched it. Knew it from the weight of my voice. He pulled it open. A quiet rustle. Paper against paper. Inside, screenshots. Hotel receipts. GPS logs. A timeline only someone methodical, heartbroken, and very patient could construct. He didn't speak. Didn't move. His fingers loosened around the envelope. His eyes stopped blinking. His mouth hung slightly open, caught mid-thought, as though his brain had short-circuited mid-sentence. I stood. "You're just a guest," I told him. His head turned toward me slowly, like it was no longer connected to the rest of him. "But this dinner," I paused, eyes on her, "was a farewell." She didn't look up. I walked out. No dramatic exit. No slammed doors. Just the soft hush of a man who no longer needed answers. I didn't wait for apologies, or anger, or denial. I left them alone with the wreckage. Silence was the only thing still being served, and somehow it was the most honest sound I'd heard from either of them in months. She chased me into the street. I let the wind do the talking. The night air felt cleaner than the room I'd left, like stepping out of smoke and into cold oxygen. Behind me, her voice cracked open the dark. "Please," she said, "I can explain." I kept walking. I heard her feet slap the pavement, bare, unprepared. Her breath stumbled over sobs, words tripping over each other in some frantic race to catch up to the truth. But I didn't stop. Not because I wanted to hurt her, not because I hated her, because I finally understood there was nothing left to ask. The wind caught her voice and thinned it, made it ghost-like. She kept pleading, repeating my name like it might still mean something between us. But the syllables felt strange now, foreign, like she was calling out to someone who no longer lived here. I turned once, just once. She stood beneath the porch light, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide and wet. Her mouth was still moving, but I heard nothing. And in that silence, I saw it clearly. I didn't know this woman. The woman I married made me mixtapes on rainy days. She used to draw tiny hearts on coffee filters and hum off-key to songs she couldn't remember the words to. She kissed me on my shoulder, not my mouth, when she was truly in love. That woman wasn't here. This trembling stranger in borrowed perfume and fabricated friends. She was a character, a mask stitched from months of practice distance. And I wasn't part of the script anymore. I turned away, kept walking. When I reached the car, I didn't slam the door. I didn't roar down the street. I sat there, hands steady on the wheel, and let the silence settle. I watched her from the rear view as she stood frozen, Not chasing anymore. Just still. Then I drove. The street disappeared behind me. House by house, memory by memory. The cold seeped through the cracks in the window, but it felt welcome. Cleansing. When I closed the door behind me later that night, it didn't slam. It exhaled. His job was his pride. Pride doesn't survive whispers. Took a week. Long enough for the tension to settle into muscle. Long enough for the shock to wear thin, replaced by something quieter. Not peace, just stillness. That's when I heard. Daniel had been fired. Officially, no cause was listed. Unofficially, it was everything. A man can get away with arrogance for a while, even deception, especially in sales. But not when the deception spills past boardrooms. Not when photographs land on a desk sealed in an envelope identical to the one I slid across my dinner table. Anonymous, of course. And as fate would have it, his boss wasn't just another executive. He was a husband once burned by the same brand of betrayal, charmed smiles, vague conferences, networking that led nowhere except divorce court. A man like that doesn't need much convincing. Just a nudge. Just proof that arrogance runs on repeat. The whisper spread faster than the truth. One day he was giving presentations, pitching to clients, shaking hands with too much confidence. The next, he was escorted out with a cardboard box and a locked email account. Collateral damage? Yes. But I didn't send the envelope to feel righteous. Or victorious. I didn't sit at home smiling at his downfall. There was no champagne. No monologue. I just felt done. Like stepping away from a chessboard mid-game and realizing the victory wouldn't bring you back the hours you lost. Daniel was never the prize. He was just the echo of a deeper problem. The mirror she leaned toward when she thought no one was watching. I didn't destroy him out of spite. I ended the conversation. Closed the loop. Sometimes truth doesn't shout. It stains. His name now carried a shadow. Not loud, not scandalous. Just enough to make people pause. Enough to make him small. And me? I slept that night. For the first time in weeks, I slept without waking in the dark, without the phantom sound of her key in the door. Without checking the driveway for a car that didn't belong. I wasn't proud. I was tired. And free. I didn't get closure. I got clarity. That's better, in the end. Closure is a door someone else decides to shut. Clarity is knowing you can walk away and not look back. I sold the house. Quietly. No open house, no goodbye photos, no lingering. Just signatures, keys in an envelope, and a locksmith scheduled for the same afternoon. I didn't leave a note. I left no forwarding address. Whatever mail arrives now can stay unopened. My new place is small. Walls bare. Not minimalist out of style, but necessity. There are no framed memories here. No drawers filled with old birthday cards. No hand-scrawled notes on the fridge. Just space. Space to breathe. Space to be a person without anyone's expectations trailing behind. I eat alone most nights. Not from sadness, but peace. There's a difference. No background music. No idle chatter about work meetings or gym plans that were never real. Just the sound of silverware and the occasional creak of the radiator. It's not lonely. It's honest. Everything here belongs to me. The quiet. The time. Even the air. I don't toast to new beginnings. That implies I needed one. I toast to silence. To stillness that doesn't wait to be interrupted. To mornings that don't begin with suspicion. To nights that don't end with, I'm just tired. Some people measure revenge in damage. I don't. I measure it in what I reclaimed. My time, my mind, my name said without flinching. She never said sorry. I never asked. And Daniel? He was just a page that burned clean. Now, I keep a matchbox in the drawer. Not as a threat. As a reminder, I didn't scream. I didn't hit. I didn't unravel. But I still won. Not loudly. Quietly. The kind of win that lets you smile into your morning coffee and realize there's no one left to lie to anymore. And that finally is the truth.